Welcome to The Hook,
where music and art come together
with the people that created it. I'm Johni.
I'm Jess.
You're on The Hook.
When you're singing a song to people around you, don't get locked up on that wailing you do.
There are artists who learn music, and then there are artists who live inside it.
Steve Bassett's musical style is a synthesis of America's root music: blues, R&B, gospel, and rock and roll.
Steve doesn't just understand the blues. He's also a master of gospel music. That rare combination makes him truly unique.
It'll block out the sunshine from your soul to theirs. Like you gave them a model and left out the glue.
He's been called a singer's singer and someone who communicates in a soulful, front porch kind of way that crosses and connects with all generations.
And leaves you feeling like he sang directly to you.
And beyond that, Steve is an entertainer, musician, songwriter, producer, jingle singer, and co-author of our beloved Sweet Virginia Breeze, the official state song of Virginia. But what really got us was the story.
Because Steve wasn't just around music. He was in the rooms where it was happening.
Steve Bassett, you're on The Hook.
You've got something good to give to your neighbors. Just go on. It don't matter how loud your ears ring. 'Cause if they get the feeling inside what you're doing, hear sweeter music than your voice can bring. The love of the universe, it waits for that instant when you start taking your mind off yourself. And then it enhances the talents you're given. So sing loud and leave the listening to somebody else. Sing loud and leave the listening to somebody else. You remember the times when you sang to Jesus? Felt like an angel had walked in the room. Well, I doubt that he paid any attention to whether or not you were singing in tune. The words are important in telling the story, and the rhythm's conducive to holding the groove. Music's a path to a whole new dimension, but only your spirit can send forth the truth. The love of the universe waits for that instant. You start taking your mind.
Your memoir, Sing Loud. As I told you, I read that in one sitting. The very first line, I've never heard a white man sing like that. And that was John Hammond Sr, a record producer, civil rights activist, helped artists like Bob Dylan, Aretha Franklin. So take us into that moment in time when he said that to you.
I was flattered. I grew up listening to soul music, blues, all music really. Here in Richmond, we got to hear everything: blues, country, R&B. But being on 95, we also got to see a lot of the artists that were out at the time, the reviews, the soul reviews, and I leaned toward that music, the rhythm of it, the soulfulness of it, the gospel nature of it all. And I grew up in church, singing a lot of gospel songs. That he would say that to me was flattering because, I'm a kid from the west end of Richmond, went to Douglas Freeman High School, and all of a sudden, a few years later, I'm sitting there with him, and his response to my singing was that. And so I was really honored, that he would feel that way about what I was doing.
And I'm assuming at that point you understood the magnitude of him.
Well, yeah. I was a student of records, back when you had a record that you could look at and read the credits and see, and, who was doing what in the business. I was very aware of him. So it meant a lot, that he would say that to me. He had just retired from Columbia Records and was in the process of setting up his own record label, John Hammond Records. after that meeting, let me know that he wanted to sign me to that label.
His first, right?
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah. But that didn't come together. That's when he took me to Columbia. And he and I went down there to the Black Rock, I guess it was, and had a meeting with somebody there. And he pitched me to them, and we got a deal for me to go make a record. And decided that the best producer for that record would be his friend Jerry Wexler, who was a producer who had produced a lot of the acts that I had grown up listening to. You know, I knew his name from reading the record credits, and also, press that was out and other things that let you know who was behind all the music we were hearing. They had been competitors before because Jerry Wexler was with Atlantic. So, all of a sudden I'm surrounded. I got these guys on, that are in my corner. And I went to lunch with them at the Friars Club, I think it was, in New York City. Jerry Wexler looked at me and said, well, Steve, if you were going to produce this record, how would you do it? I said, well, man, I'd grab Elliot Randall, who's a guitar player friend of mine in New York, and go to Muscle Shoals and do it with the Swampers. And he said, well, let's do that. That's what we did.
And the Swampers are the ones that kind of broke away from fame.
Yeah. Yeah, eventually they did. The original Swampers were Roger Hawkins on drums, David Hood on bass, Jimmy Johnson on guitar, and Spooner Oldham on keyboards. Mm-hmm. Spooner then moved, I think, to Memphis. He and Dan Penn started doing some things over there, and Barry Beckett came up from Florida to fill the keyboard chair. That's who the Swampers were when I got down there, which was early 80s, maybe 80.
That's so crazy to go from just sitting there with Hammond and then you're like at Muscle Shoals.
Yeah,
right?
The whole thing was crazy.
What?
The whole thing was crazy. I was transported, into all of a sudden I'm in the presence of my heroes, because I was always into who was the musicians were on the record that I was listening to that was playing behind Otis Redding or Wilson Pickett or those guys, So all of a sudden I was there with them. It was a funny time in the business because they were all doing something new at the time. Like Mr. Hammond and Jerry had just left the record labels that they were working for, and the Swampers were in a new studio that they had purchased.
Muscle Shoals Sound.
Muscle Shoals Sound.
Yeah.
The original one was over on Jackson Highway, and it was just a little stone building. Mm-hmm. And I had been there before and met them once there, where they were after Fame. When they were at Fame working with Rick Hall, it was after that they went on their own to create Muscle Shoals Sound at the original studio. And then sometime later, they bought this it used to be an armory down on the Tennessee River, and converted it into a studio, a couple of great studios there in that building. And
wow.
That's where I went to make the record that I made.
I'll tell you one thing. You brought up Spooner.
Yeah.
Your story about him trying to get up on the stage had me crying laughing.
I'm still humiliated by the way I acted.
What I can't believe is that you never had a moment of saying, Spooner, I got to confess something to you right now.
I did years later.
Okay,
hold on. I don't know this story.
Johni in. Can you fill
need
Johni
to tell
in?
me the story.
Well, I was playing with Delbert, and we were, I think, at Antone's maybe. And it was the same day as a big festival down on the river in Austin called Riverfest. And we were playing after the Riverfest show was over. It was like a daytime festival. And we were playing that night in a bar. So a lot of the artists from that show had come to see Delbert. And there was a bunch of guys, coming to sit in. with his band. And I was on organ, and I could see these other guys. I think Richie Hayward, I think Little Feat was playing, and Richie Hayward came up to play, and there's some different guys that came up to the stage. Delbert was the one who was bringing them up, so I could recognize them as being guest artists. But all of a sudden, this guy kind of walks out of the crowd and comes over and sits next to me on the organ bench. And I kind of bumped him a little bit because I was in the middle of playing a song. I was just trying to make room for myself to continue on with this tune we were playing. And I didn't know who he was. So, and, in the party spirit that we may have been in at the time, I finally got tired of him sitting there doing nothing, and I bumped him again. He fell off the organ stick. Delbert turned and looked at me and gave me a look, and looked like, get off of the organ kind of look,
no.
And I went, okay, and Spooner got up there on the bench, and he started playing, and then somebody hit me to who I had just sat on the floor.
Oh, that's the Scorpio in him.
Years later, Spooner was playing with Peggy Young. Peggy, I think it was Neil Young's wife.
Okay.
And she was out touring, and he was playing with her, as well as another buddy from Muscle Shoals, guy named Kelvin Holly, guitar player. And I went to see him, and they came to my house and, to visit. And I think that's when I told him. But he didn't remember it.
He didn't?
Well, no, he didn't remember that like I did.
Oh,
It was just another thing that happened to him, But
another thing that happened to him.
Gosh.
But
That's
I remember
awesome.
the other thing that came up that day is he wrote a song called I'm Your Puppet. And, back in the day when you're learning words to songs that you're covering, the only thing you had available to you was the record to listen to and decipher what the singer was saying to learn the lyrics for the song. And in a lot of cases, it got misinterpreted. You couldn't just Google the song title and put lyric after it and get the lyrics. And I've been singing that song, I'm Your Puppet, for many years. And there was a line in it that said, and I asked Spooner, I said, there's something about that song I don't understand. He said, what? I said, well, there's one line that says, I'll be wonderful, do just what I'm told. He said, well, that's not the lyric. I said, well, what is it? He said, I'll be warm or cold, do just what I'm told. So I went, oh, like you just did. And so ever since then, now I sing the correct lyrics, but that's the only way I would have known the difference.
I don't know. You should have went back to the old ones just for fun.
My big one was I took a pill and ate pizza.
What?
Or I took a pill in Ibiza.
What?
Oh,
I
no.
thought it was I took a pill and ate pizza for years. Which, why not? I took a pill and then I had some pizza.
I thought the Dirty Deeds and the Dunder Chief. And I didn't even know what that meant.
Hysterical.
And it was later I heard it done dirt cheap,
Oh, no. Let's throw in Blinded by the Light. Does anybody know what that song says? I mean, we all have words for that one.
Oh, my gosh.
Love that. The what, Chief?
Dunder Cheek. It sounds,
I like that too. That's
that's
exactly what I'm saying all this.
the best I could get from it.
That's great.
And there's been a lot of songs that I've found out later that I'd been singing the wrong lyrics, but now I change lyrics myself.
Yeah, it's
just for
fun to do that.
Oh, yeah.
Make stuff up. Or if you can't remember them, then just,
Yeah, when you play, do you do that? Like,
oh, yeah, all the time.
talk to the crowd and they don't know it?
Yeah, I'll change lyrics, and
I love it.
Nothing I want to talk about here.
I don't know. It's pretty free here. You were told to come hear a band from Austin, Texas. You'll hear the rhythm section of a freight train.
Right.
Did that moment change how you thought about music?
I've always been about the rhythm section, because I've always been in the rhythm section. And it's the rhythm and blues music, the first word's rhythm. So the way that came about was that I was with Mr. Hammond, and he said, there's this band I got to go listen to. Come with me, and you hear the rhythm section of a freight train, or whatever the actual thing he said. And he and I walked through the city down a few blocks to some basement club and went down in the basement, and there was nobody there. But there was a band set up on stage, or I could see the amps and stuff, and a little two-top in the middle of the dance floor. And he and I sat down at this two-top, and all of a sudden these guys come out. It was Stevie Ray Vaughan in Double Trouble.
So
and
crazy.
in fact, those guys laid it down, Tommy, and they were all about rhythm, and it was a strong rhythm section. They were auditioning, to Mr. Hammond. And I remember Stevie's lady at the time came up to the table and gave some flowers to Mr. Hammond. And we sat there, and I think they played 3 or 4 songs. And then we left.
Wow.
And he signed them. He got them signed. And then shortly after that, I went out on the road and opened for them a bunch of shows that they did their first promotional tour, and got to know him and the guys.
Yeah, what was that like?
Great guys, Texans, road warriors, living in a bus, living that on the exit ramps of America, living from one gig to the next and getting up there and throwing it down. And there was nobody like Stevie before or after. With the way that he did what he did. And they were very nice to us, as an opening band.
You're on the hook with Johni and Jess.
If you're a musician, artist, or creative, your website shouldn't look like an afterthought.
Your brand is your stage, and your website is often the first place people decide if you're the real deal.
River City Consulting builds websites specifically for creatives, musicians, performers, and artists who need an online presence that matches their talent.
They're also the official website agency for the Hook podcast.
Learn more at rivercityamplified.com. That's rivercityamplified.com. And use promo code The Hook for serious savings.
I was going to ask, because Stevie seems like he's a very deep, brilliant, of course, into the music or whatever. Was he a very chill guy, cool, mellow?
Super all of that,
yeah.
But, to himself, kind of guy, stuck to himself a lot. Well, a lot of those guys that I met did. I remember, I used to go downtown and listen to this band called Child. I used to play Asparagus Farm. And then it was down there in the van,
That's a great
Laurel,
name,
right?
Corner of Laurel and Broad. After that, it became known as something else. And then that band, it was Bruce Springsteen.
Oh, wow.
And then the band became something, had another name after that. Steel Mill, I guess it was. Anyway, Richmond was like an alternate market from Asbury Park. And that where he was from and played. And he used to come to Richmond and play. He had a fan base here, and everybody loved him. And he used to come here and play all the time. And I saw him down there with his band. And then I left Richmond, graduated from Freeman, and ended up down in Wilson, North Carolina. And somehow got called on to become involved in booking entertainment there. And there was a show coming up. And I said, well, I've seen this band called Steel Mill that you guys need to see. And they go, who's that? We want to get the Tams, or some kind of beach music thing. And I kind of stuck with what I was trying to do, and they agreed. Of course, I was going to open the show with my band at the time, and called up there to tinker, and they came down and played the show. I put them up at this house that a professor there had that some of us students used to hang there, the hippies of the bunch. And they crashed there at the house that night, and everybody's off partying in one room. And in another room, there's Bruce laying on the floor with a couple speakers on each side of his head, like listening to Neil Young, I think, at the time. But
wow.
He kind of, at that time, he kind of was off to himself, kind of cat. And a lot of artists are that way. You wouldn't imagine that they'd get up on stage and do that. And I'm kind of that way in a way. It's being on stage when I was in high school and finding out that I could go up there and be comfortable there, even more comfortable than if I was out there looking
in
the
the
other
crowd.
Yeah, That's part of what got me into being in the entertainment business, was that was a comfortable place for me, although when the show wasn't going on, I was kind of MIA.
A homebody.
Well, yeah, in a way. Yeah.
A little more introverted. It's everybody we've talked to.
Everybody. All the creative people, they respect their home space.
Yeah.
Like
and I
silence.
guess it's because
they all like silence.
Yes. They don't listen to a bunch of, you were just saying when you came in, you don't listen to a bunch of talking or whatever.
Right.
Because I feel like you guys put so much out when you're on the stage that when you come home, you just want to
restore energy back.
just bring it back.
Yeah. that's what took me to the country. When I moved from Richmond out to Cartersville, it's real peaceful out there, real quiet, and you get to hear birds and things like that you don't hear in town.
You can't jump past Bruce Springsteen without telling Johni about ending up with his tank top.
Wait, what?
Well, that night that he stayed there in Wilson with us, they left. They'd come down, all of them together in like a Chevy station wagon, and Tinker had all the gear in a hay truck. And they left, and there was this blue and gray striped tank top that I had seen him wear several times when I'd seen him play. And I nabbed it. Well, they were gone, but I grabbed it and put it
Good for you.
in my knapsack with, a couple other T-shirts I had at the time.
Are there any pictures anywhere of him in that tank top? Because that's hysterical.
But that's back before the E Street Band. I'm going back pretty far with that.
Yeah.
That would have been like...
He's probably like, where is that tank top?
It would have been 19... Well,
It circles back.
I kept it.
Oh, okay.
Wore it, a few times, and then came home, was back in Richmond, and they were playing a show on the top of a parking deck downtown. And I went down there to that show with that tank top and worked my way to the stage and ran into him and said, "Man, you left this in Wilson. Thought you might like."
Oh, you weren't wearing it.
No, I wasn't wearing it. I took it with me. My mother washed it, for me, and I folded it up. And
smelled really good.
Yeah, I took it down there to him, and he reacted. He was grateful that I had returned it to him. He recognized it as his.
Way.
Yeah, that was an interchange that we had back then.
Did you ever encounter him in later years?
Yeah, a couple times, early '80s, and I ended up out in California, I think I was. A local band from Richmond was opening for the Pretenders there. And I went to that show because they were there. Single Bullet Theory was the name of the band. And because I was their guest of the opening act, I was backstage. And backstage, I saw him standing in the hallway, kind of leaning up against the wall. I walked up to him and I said, I didn't expect him to recognize me, and he didn't. But I looked at him and said, "What are you doing, man?" He said, "Well, I'm standing here. My manager's in there talking to Chrissy Hyde about whether or not I'm going to sit in here on this show tonight." And he looked like he was pretty uncomfortable about the whole thing. But we didn't get to chat long other than I let him know that I'd met Mr. Hammond. That got his attention. But we didn't chat for long. He looked like he had other things on his mind, and I walked away.
Did he end up playing? Did he play?
Yeah, he ended up on stage. And Robin Thompson, my partner, he was close with Bruce. As a matter of fact, back then, Bruce hired him to come sing with the band. I think he was wanting to not have to sing or something like that, and pulled Robin in to work with them and be the lead singer in the group.
Wow.
For a while.
Oh, wow.
And they got to be pals and stayed in touch all the way through the rest of Robin's life. Of course, the boss was big at the time of this story, and he had come back through Richmond and invited Robin to sit in. And I think also Bruce Hornsby.
Just met his sound man.
Yeah, he retired since, but Wayne.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I
know great guy. Yeah.
Terrific guy. He was one of the engineers down at Alpha Audio. But I remember that Bruce invited Robin, I think Bruce Hornsby, up to sing at the same time, and played an old song. I don't remember which rock and roll song it was, but he called it an old rock and roll classic, and threw a verse to Robin. And Robin wasn't that familiar with the song, but like being intuitive as he was, just made up some lyrics about Bruce being in Richmond and stuff like that, and sang them. And was bemoaning the fact that he had done that after the performance back in the dressing room to Bruce Hornsby. And Bruce said, "Well, man, you evidently didn't see the teleprompter that was down there at your feet."
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But that only spoke to Robin's ability to rise to the occasion in a situation like that.
True musician. On the spot. Okay, before all of this, the Hammond moment, New York, Bruce Springsteen, you were part of a band here in Richmond, The Hazards.
Oh, wow. Yeah. You're going back to the beginning.
Yeah. For people who may not know, that wasn't just a casual thing. That was a real band, a real scene, real momentum. What was that time like?
I'll tell you how I got into that band. It was that the keyboard player that they had was leaving, and he mentioned me to them. Of course, this is back, we're talking mid-'60s, I think, early 60s possibly. I think I was maybe 15. The Beatles happened in 64. Mm-hmm. I was 14 then. Mm-hmm. I was already playing before then. Music that I was emulating was like the rock and roll then was Jerry Lee Lewis, Little Richard, and a lot of it was instrumental music, It was the Beatles and the Beach Boys that all of a sudden brought lyrics and singing into the pop world, I think, is one way to put it. He turned to me. I was in a band at the time called The Reactions. And before that, it was a band called The Potentials.
How old were you then?
Well, I started playing when I was 12, trying to play. Wanted to take piano lessons. Mm-hmm. And my folks agreed. And my dad found an old rebuilt player piano, which was one of those that had a roll in it, for sale. Wow. My dad, being who he was, he said, tell you what, we'll go in at half and half. Because I was already working as a paper boy and had a pretty big route. So we went and bought this piano for $100. And then Mom found a piano teacher. And I went to a few lessons. And then I got fired. The teacher called my mother and says, I can't teach him anymore. She said, well, why? Well, obviously he's not practicing at home. And he comes here to his lessons. He's trying to play everything by ear. He's not reading the music like I need him to be able to play the Moonlight Sonata or whatever it was at the time. So, I was just jamming on whatever pianos were around. Like I think my first job was, how old are you in the 7th grade?
13.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I remember one of the first jobs I played, some of us got together in the den of a friend of mine's house who was a drummer and learned some songs and went over there and played in the cafeteria for a sock hop at the 7th grade. And
that's awesome.
That was, the beginning of my playing, jamming. There's a picture, I don't know if it's in my memoir or not, but a picture survives of us learning the music for that show. And I'm standing there at a piano with one hand in my pocket, just banging with my right hand. But Stanley Bernstein, who was the keyboard player for the Hazards, and I had played, in another band anyway, Stanley turned to me and says, I'll sell you my keyboard and you can have my slot in the band. And I bought from him an Ace-Tone Phoenix combo organ or, electronic organ. Worst sounding thing you ever heard. It wasn't even Farfisa or Vox Continental like you would hear in 96 Tears or Double Shot of My Baby's Love, these little electronic organs that were used in those recordings. It sounded kind of like that, but worse. My mother made a blue corduroy skirt that would go around it, and my dad made some blocks that would go under the legs of the piano so that it would raise it up about 6 inches, and with the skirt around it, it looked like a bigger organ.
Wow.
But
please tell me you have a picture.
Yeah, there's pictures of me playing that organ. Picture that comes to mind is a picture of when I was with a band called The Reactions. We were as a 4-piece band, bass, drums, guitar, and me, and a lead singer. So that makes 5, doesn't it? Bass, drum, guitar. It was 5.
I can't count that fast.
And I'm sitting behind that organ playing, standing behind the organ and playing. We had all gone downtown to one of the stores that were down on East Broad Street and bought these shark skin suits with a black velvet collar and Beatle boots, Beatles time frame. But we were playing soul music. But that's how I got in the Hazards.
I want you to share the story of what you did when you didn't feel like delivering the newspapers one morning.
Oh, did I write about that? Afraid to talk about it. Well, I see, every morning when, get up at like 5 or something like that and make my way on my Schwinn bike with a huge basket on the front down Michael's Road to the curve in it where our papers were dropped in bundles. And the different paper boys picked them up from there. And there was a guy that I would meet there, a neighbor, every morning. And he and I would light a fire with the wrappers that came around it. Well, before we'd light the fire, we'd listen into the quiet of the neighborhood for the sound of the Richmond dairy truck. Because back then they delivered milk in bottles to the front door of your house. and we would listen for if we could hear where the truck was. And if we could hear it, we'd get on our bikes and go find it and get some chocolate milk.
No way.
And go back to the drop and take the wrappers off the bundles and fold the papers in a way that would fit in our basket so that we could throw them to the front porch of the houses that we were delivering them to. And, of course, I did it on my bike. He happened to know where that a neighbor of his left the keys to their car. He used to go borrow their car and deliver his papers.
No way.
Yeah.
How old was he?
Well, I guess we were, 12? But,
I love it. Yeah. Who's up at 5?
Nobody.
Nobody's out there at all.
No.
Except the only thing that's out there is dogs.
No.
And they would chase us every morning. But it was a cold morning, and we were burning the wrappers, and all of a sudden somebody threw a paper in the fire. Well, before you know it, we burned up 2 bundles of papers.
Oh, my gosh.
And went back home and never delivered them. And the district manager showed up at our door, and we were consistent in the lie that we told him that we'd never received them.
Oh, my gosh.
And I can't believe I wrote about it. I can't believe I'm owning up to it now. But I felt bad about it ever since I did that. There's a line in the song that BJ and I wrote on our new record. The line is, I regret everything I've done, but so what? I'll be the better for it.
Yes.
So good.
That's so good. Yeah.
I'm a sensitive cat. Things where I've done wrong, I remember it forever, especially if it was to anybody personally, intentionally or not.
So we're going to throw some names and moments, and you give us some of the story behind them. Of course, I'm going to say Stevie Ray Vaughan. What made him different in your mind before everyone else saw it?
His approach, how he threw himself into his singing and playing, his passion about doing it. You can impress people with talent. Intellectually, they can see that you're really talented playing or singing or whatever. But if you can feel what they're doing, you'll never forget them. And it's a big difference between recognizing talent and appreciating their ability, but actually feeling, what they're doing has a physical effect on you. The way that he approached that guitar and the sound that he made, of course, the volume was like ridiculously loud. It was unbelievably loud, which, hey, I'm not criticizing that. There's power to that. But there was just nobody like him. I'd never heard anybody sing like him or play like him. There's moments where it was very Hendrix-esque. You could catch the roots of where he was coming from, the blues, you could hear those roots in it, but it was offered in a style like no one else's. And that's what cats like John Hammond and Jerry Wexler and those people, that's what they were looking for. If you look at the artists that they represented and worked with, they were all unique and had a style. That impressed me about him more than anything was the style that he had in his playing and the energy and passion that he had for it. In addition to just how awesome it was to listen to.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I love that, how you said how you felt it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
There's some artists that just make the hair stand up.
Yeah. Yeah.
You mentioned crossing paths with Paul Shaffer, David Letterman's longtime band leader, and one of those guys who's just everywhere in music, of course. What was that scene like behind the curtain?
Well, it was the New York session scene. I had a manager briefly when I first got started, and he took me to New York to make a demo of 3 or 4 of my songs and hired a producer to do that, a guy named Elliot Shiner, worked with Phil Ramone at the time. And he hired a band that was an all-star New York session band. The players were Don Gronick, Steve Kahn, Jeff Marinoff, these guys who I knew from album covers, knew their names and who they were from listening to them play on different people's records. Well, Elliot's co-producer was a guy from New York City who family owned some record stores in the city. A friend of his was in the next studio, and that friend of his was named Elliot Randall, who was a guitar player, session guitar player, but, had been on a record that I was familiar with called Randall's Island. And I got to meet him and got to know him. And we kind of hit it off. And he started calling me because these session guys wanted to play live. And they didn't hardly ever play live. They were all just running from session to session, jingles, record dates, whatever they were doing. But they wanted to get out sometimes and do a live set. The music that they wanted to play was soul music. And Elliot knew me and that I was conversant in that style of music. So they used to bring me up to New York to be their singer. And one of Elliot's closest pals at the time was Paul. So the times that we spent together were at Elliot's studio or Elliot's apartment, or whatever, partying, but also playing these shows. One of them was called Tracks. There were some different clubs, and they were always midnight shows. So Paul and I got to be friendly at that time because we were doing some things together. This was before, all the Letterman stuff. So that's how I got to know him. His ability as a player was crazy. He's a great player. And musically, he was familiar with all kinds of music, But he got him a good gig there. And
Yeah.
They did. And that was they were a good band. That's how I met Paul, was through Elliot.
That's cool.
All right, next one up is Doc Pomus. So for anyone that may not know, he was the legendary songwriter for Save the Last Dance for Me. Elvis, Ray Charles really shaped that era of music. What did you pick up being around him? What was that experience like?
Well, I was only around him at a couple of gigs that I did with Delbert at the Lone Star Cafe. He was a fan of Delbert's, and he would come out to the Lone Star, and the dressing room was upstairs and had a door out to the roof of the club. And there was a huge statue of an iguana, I think I remember, that was up there. Anyway, I chatted with him once, one of those nights, but I just happened to be in his company because he was there as a fan of Delbert's. Of course, I was familiar with what he'd done.
You're so laid back. Did you ever get like starstruck or like, wow?
Geek out?
Yeah, geek out.
Did you geek out? And if it was who?
Yeah.
Well, not enough to get on anybody's nerves, you know. And no, you know, I felt lucky to be in the company of people who I admired and situations. I've ended up in a lot of situations where there was a lot of people there to admire, just because I had ended up on the date or ended up in the room. And that's, you know, it's great memories that I have of being around a lot of those folks. But I didn't geek out enough to ever piss them off. I don't think, you know, you'd have to check with them. But I'm even further back than laid back on into reclusive in a way in those situations.
You silently geeked.
Yeah. You know, what am I doing here? How did this happen? How did this happen to me? They were all blessings. I mentioned to somebody once, you know, and I think back to where I've been and what I've done. That's the treasure that I have is being in the company, you know, of my heroes. I remember one time I was playing a show with Delbert, and we were maybe Texas, but we toured with B.B. King, opening for B.B. King for a while. And I was in the dressing room, and Dr. John was on the show.
I mean, you just said in 5 minutes, B.B. King and Dr. John and Delbert. I mean, it's beautiful.
Well, I got to be around all those cats, you know. Life did that. You know, the universe pulled that off. But, I don't like to bug anybody, but there's Dr. John standing in the hallway. I'm a huge fan of Dr. John's. I had done a few commercials by then and had heard Dr. John singing on a commercial or two. And I walked up to him and said, "Hey, man, I'm here with Delbert. Listen, I've been hearing you singing these jingles. How do you like doing all that?" And he looked at me and said, "Oh, it's been mighty good to my family." You know, wow. I can dig it. So, you know, that was enough. And I said, "Man, great to hear you out there, you know, loving it," and walked away, you know, rather than, I got 6 more questions for you, you know, because I get that. And especially when you're backstage, you know, and you're in that setting.
That's your safe place.
That's their safe place. You know what I mean? And so what am I going to do?
And they're in their head, you know.
Give them a break, you know. They get that all the time from everybody. I don't want to be that, you know. The thing that wouldn't go away. You know?
The thing that wouldn't go away.
That was huge in our household. My stepfather. Loved him.
Let's dive into Delbert McClinton just a little bit. He was one of those artists who just owned the stage. What did he teach you about connecting with an audience?
He was just one of those guys, you know, that just was what he sounds like, you know, that threw his self into his singing 110%. Went somewhere else in his head to do it. You know what I mean? It's just a natural talent that he had of delivering the style of music that he leaned towards in a soulful, rocking way. You know, when I met him, it was here in Richmond. It was a club called Much More. It was right at the corner of Boulevard and Broad, across from People's Drugstore. And it was a happening club at the time. And Delbert was booked to play there, and I got hired to open for him. So my band played first, and then I only knew about Delbert before that night from listening to WGOE, which was one of the first FM radio stations in town that was alternative and was playing rock and roll and blues and stuff that was coming out at that time, and had heard that Delbert wrote 2 More Bottles of Wine. That was a hit at that time by Emmylou Harris. So I knew his name as a songwriter, but not as a performer. Didn't have any of his records or anything like that. But then I was there, I'm opening for him that night. And we, you know, got along great and partied together after the show. And then maybe about a week later, I got a phone call from him. He said, "Hey, man, look, I've got some dates up in the Northeast that I need to do. How about if me and James Pennybaker, his guitar player, come out and fall in with your band, and we'll go do these dates I've got as the Delbert McClinton Band?"
Wow.
I said, "Man, I'm in." So they flew out and jumped into my RV with my guys, and we went up there and we played Boston, played 3 or 4 days together with my band. You know, we were the pickup band. And but he and I got tight, got some mutual admiration started happening, and he discovered the roots of where I was coming from and my way of singing. I got a call from Delbert not too long after that. His keyboard player, Reese Winans, was not going to be available to do Austin City Limits with Delbert. So he called me to see if I'd come out and play organ and piano in Reese's place. And I did. And it's a video that's out there that you can see. Got me out there a couple days early so that we could rehearse. And they were all so crazy. I sat in a hotel room for 2 days. They never rehearsed. And I had to leave the hotel and walk down the street to the campus of the college where the studio was for the show and go there and do this show cold. I pulled it off. We got through it, had a great time doing it. Delbert and I became great friends. And he always invited me whenever he was in this part of the country to come and open for him or, to sub, on keyboards. I just talked to him not too long ago. We just became friends. When I got to the point where I was doing some jingle stuff, I was able to turn him on to some cats that I was working for and get him a couple gigs,
Make a little side hustle cash.
Yeah, he did some spots. I can't remember who you did them for, but it was up in New York. And, every now and then I'd go out and play with him. I remember one time he had a new record coming out, and he said, "Come on, man." I said, "Man, no, I'm good." No, And I always traveled independent, I had always had an RV, and I was able to go places and do things, on my own and not have to be in the bus with 12 other pairs of socks. And,
we've heard the stories of the buses.
Yeah, well, it's
not all fun and games.
No, it's living on the exit ramps of America. Is pretty much what it is. I said, "Well, okay, man, I'll come out for just a little while," because he had a new record coming out and he wanted to freshen the band up a little bit, and I guess he made me think that me joining them would somehow freshen the band up. 2 weeks later, when he fired everybody in the band but me, I understood what it was all about. I wasn't able to leave, and I had to hang in there until we auditioned a bunch of different players that would go out and do some dates until we found the cats that he jived with and was going to keep. And as soon as that gelled together and he had the band that he wanted, I think we were maybe New Orleans or something like that. And I said, "Let's go to breakfast in the morning." And I knew that they were getting ready to go to L.A. to do some dates. And we went to breakfast, and I said, "Man, I got to go home." "Are you cool?" He said, "Yeah, I'm cool." I'm cool. Okay. He was mad about it, but he didn't hold it against me.
Just the stories coming from you are killing me.
Well, I think they're killing me, too, at this point. but I'm hanging in there best I can.
You're still going, my friend.
Yeah, Yep, somehow.
Well, you tell the story about Rick Darnell introducing himself to you, basically saying, "Yeah, I wrote The Thrill Is Gone."
By the way.
By the way.
And he's from Farmville.
Yes.
Well, I think Elliot was here. We were working on an album that I did called Standing on the Verge. I had done a gig with my band previous to that out at the airport. And we were in a session, I think. But the phone rang, and back then a phone would ring.
Yeah.
I picked it up. You didn't get to see who was calling. "Hey, man, this is Rick Darnell.
Oh, my goodness.
I heard y'all over the airport the other day, man. I really like what y'all were doing." And, I used to write songs. I wrote a song called The Thrill Is Gone. I'm saying to myself, the guy who wrote The Thrill Is Gone was in Farmville,
From Farmville.
He said, "But, maybe we get together. I think I could write again." And so I said, "I got nothing to lose, I'll humor the guy." Well, a buddy of mine had a music store over in Farmville, so I got him to meet me there because I knew there'd be a keyboard there. Neutral territory. We wrote 3 songs that day. I said, "Man, this is cool. This guy's for real." And also I did a little investigating to find out that he was, in fact, for real. And so he was there in Farmville running a little AM radio station called WPAK. It was on Plank Road there, right as you enter Farmville along the river. And I went over there. This is like the station was out of the 50s. It's just a tower out front, little cinder block building. Control room had these cart machines, all the old gear with knobs and all that. It was like walking into the past. And there was nobody there but him. and he was managing this radio station. He had a 100 CD carousel player that he ran random, and he was selling ads to the businesses around Farmville and making ads and all for them. And well, I got to know him and found out about him. He was from Compton, California, and he was a kid, and he heard that they were buying up in Hollywood. They were buying songs for $10 a piece, and he was from the hood, and so he was writing songs and going up there and coming back with like a little cash in his pocket, doing well, you know. Well, he ended up with a cut. I don't remember what his first cuts were. Maya Angelou did one of his songs on some record she made. He had a couple of cuts happen, and ended up working with a guy named Johnny Otis, and went on the road with him for a lot of his shows, but ended up in the studio where an artist named Roy Hawkins, blues artist, was working on a record. And he was in the lounge, and they needed a song to cut next. And he, in the lounge, wrote The Thrill Is Gone.
Wow.
And they cut it, and it was released, Roy Hawkins. Well, it was years later when B.B. King covered it, and that was 1969. And it became the first blues song on the pop charts, on the American pop charts. Well, Rick moved from there into the radio business as a disc jockey, had a really great voice and a distinct pronunciation, great radio voice, and spent his life living in different parts of the United States, working at these black radio stations. Every town he was in, he would always start a free press paper and worked that through till he ended up, you know, in his elder years in Farmville, running this little AM radio station. Well, I took my gear. I went to the radio station and saw they had this back room back there that was empty. So I took my RV and a trailer and all of my gear that I had at home that was in my little studio and moved it into the back room of this radio station and set it up as a little recording studio and pretty much lived there, much to my wife's chagrin, and wrote songs with this guy and ran this radio station, you know, helped him run this radio station, which meant every 40 minutes or maybe less, we'd leave the back room where we were writing or demoing songs to go up and push a few carts into the machines and play a few spots. You know, I would make the commercials. You know, he'd come back to the station. He sold somebody a spot, and I'd make the spot, and we'd run it. But in that year's time, we probably wrote 30 songs together. And towards the end of that time, he and I went down to Fame and rented the studio and got a band together, David Hood and some different cats that were there, and recorded a dozen of the songs that we had written there at Fame with my friends down in the Shoals, and released it, you know, all the CDs that I made, I just make them and sell them at the gigs. They were never on a label. They were never promoted. They were never distributed. You know, I made 25 albums and nobody knows about any of them. You know what I mean?
My gosh.
But my interest was in making the song, making the music. Once the thing's mixed,
You're a songwriter.
got a cover on it, it's done. Next. You know what I mean? But that album was named after a song that we wrote called You Don't Know Me. Make me mad. You don't know me, baby. You don't want to make me mad. Call
'Cause if you double-cross me, woman, I'll be the worst nightmare you ever had. You don't know me, so you better stop them foolish games. You don't know me, baby, so you better stop them foolish games. You might get a rude awakening. This trouble is my middle name. I gave you all my money and all my loving too. 13 loving children. Tell me, what more can I do? Oh, I come home every evening, dripping wet with sweat. Now, if you think you know me, baby, well, you ain't seen nothing yet. 'Cause you don't know me, and you don't want to make me mad. Cause if you double-cross me, baby, I'll be the worst nightmare you ever had. Tell me that you got me figured out. They say you got a good thing, baby, and that's what it's all about. Well, I'm here to tell you, woman, that there's some things that you don't know. If you keep messing with me, baby, you'll have to pack your bags and go. 'Cause you don't know me. Oh, you don't want to make me mad. If you double-cross me, baby, I'll be the worst nightmare you ever had.
Anybody out there in radio land, I think that you can find that on the streaming platform somewhere. But that's the Rick Darnell story.
You tell this incredible story about being on a plane, and Ella Fitzgerald hears your demo.
Yeah.
For anyone who may not realize, we're talking about the Ella Fitzgerald, one of the greatest voices of all time. And your jingles ended up in her hands, and she actually turns around and says she recognizes your voice. You got to tell us this
that happened.
one.
Well, it's back in the days when flying was easy. You know, you want to fly out of Richmond, you get there, you can park about like 20 feet from the door if you get to the right spot. You walk in there, and as long as you're there, and before they shut the door of the airplane, you're good to go. But I was flying so much back then that I got to know people at the airport that worked behind the counter. I might be going to New York. I think I was going to New York at that day. There was room up front, so they bumped me to the front. So I got on the plane and sat down. I was like second or third seat back from the front. And I sit down next to this guy. Well, we get to chatting, you know. It's probably 10 o'clock in the morning. And I think we ordered a drink.
You think?
And we got to chatting. Turns out that he was Ella Fitzgerald's road manager, and that they just played a show in Richmond the night before. And there she is, sitting right up there, two seats in front of you, you know. what do you do? I said, well, man, I'm going up here to sing a jingle. Oh, yeah, you do that stuff? I said, yeah, I do. And, well, have I ever heard, what you've done? I said, it's a good chance of it. And I had a Walkman, with a cassette of my reel at the time, which was just excerpts from different commercials that I've been featured on. And he put his headphones on and listened to it. And all of a sudden he got up and he says, she needs to hear this. And he walks up to the front seat and he puts the headphones on her and hits the play button. She gets about halfway through it and turns around and looks at me. She said, I know that voice. You keep singing, boy. Oh. And turned back around. And, she didn't have to do that. And what a kind thing to say to a cat like me. It doesn't take but something nice to say to somebody that can reinforce everything they're doing from somebody like that. One of the greatest singers in the world tell you to keep on going. What are you going to do?
You're going to keep on going.
Yeah.
I don't guess she makes a habit of lying to people much.
No.
Has no need to. Right. You know what I mean? And this was probably late 80s. The way I got into singing jingles was a result of going up to New York and doing one of these midnight shows with Elliott and Paul Shaffer and the guys, Gene Santini on bass, just the cats, the New York cats. And I got done, and this guy walks up to me and says, you going to be in town in the morning? I said, yeah. He said, why? Well, will you come and sing a demo for Burger King? I said, what does it pay? He said, $100. I said, I'll be there. So I went to the studio and sang this demo for the guy and then left. I think maybe went back out with Delbert or something and was away from home for a while. And I got home. I had a post office box up in Cartersville. I went to my post office box and there's a stack of checks in there. It turned out that they'd sold the demo. And these were residual checks to me for being the lead singer on the commercial.
Wow.
Make it special, make it Burger King. So I said, hey, this be something to look into. So Elliott and the cats that I were working with, that's how they made their living up there, was doing these sessions all day long. So I went up to New York, and Elliott opened his book and shared with me about 10 or 15 names and numbers of people who hired him to play. Well, at that time, I had finished the record I did for Columbia. So I went to each of those places, stayed at Elliott's house, dropped a cassette of this Burger King commercial and a copy of my new record, and told them all that I'd moved to New York and I was wanting to work. Then I went to Nashville. I got up with a buddy down there, got a list, dropped my demo reel and my record, told them I'd moved to Nashville. Then I went to Chicago, did the same thing. All of this on credit cards. And came back home. And so, okay, the town that calls, I'll go do that for a while. Well, the timing of it was such that an article came out in a magazine called Advertising Age, I think it was called, but it was like the industry trade rag for ad agencies and music producers and stuff. And somebody had written an article in there that said we need to start making our commercials sound more like the music of this time than Patti Page and, than the music of yesteryear. And they all started calling me at once. Well, I started going, and I had to show up, like in New York, to the session, like maybe I'd come up from the Village, rather than had to drive from Cartersville to Richmond to get in the airplane, to get in there early enough to be able to get to the studio by 9, 10, you know what I mean, that kind of thing. And then as it started rolling, I'm like flying every day from one city to the next, and it turned into a thing. They found me out after a while that I didn't live in their town. But by then, I was already getting known for what I was doing to the point where they didn't care. And they started paying for the plane tickets.
Nice.
But
and the residual checks were coming in.
Yeah, it came in pretty good there. I did that, I guess, for about 10 years. I did that stuff. And the coolest part of all of it, I mean, it was nice to be making a little money for once in the music business.
Put your hands together now. Give a warm barbecue welcome to the Solar Sauce. Baby, you were born to barbecue. Barbecue. When you party right, it's a natural life.
time for the great taste of McDonald's.
Looking for Dolly Madison. He is the snacking dude. If you like your hamburgers 100% all-American, hot and beefy, clap your hands. McDonald's. Looking out for number one. Toyota. There's more for your life at Sears. You really make it work. This one's for you. The Discover card puts money in a whole new light.
What's your secret, Gerber babies? Cheeks so rosy, smile so bright. You must be doing something right.
I need a vacation. I'm flying friendly skies. Heinz is the one, the delicious one. Heinz is the thin, rich one. You want a shampoo, works as hard as you. Wash and go with Perks. Beautiful skin begins with Noxzema. Make it special. Make it Burger King. There's nothing like the flavor of a special place. And old Milwaukee beer. That's the way it is. And will always be. I lean on you. You lean on me. Everybody is somebody at Dean Witter. Who's drinking Pepsi? Sun-kissed, juicy, good, good, good. Good vibration. Miller Lite, instant. And that's that. Birds fly over the rainbow. Why? Then why can't I?
Everybody loves those blue box blues.
Everybody loves those.
Everybody loves those blue box.
They love those.
My wish as a singer had always been to be heard. It wasn't to be rich and famous. I had a gift that I wanted to be able to share, and my hope was that people would hear my voice and like it. Didn't matter to me whether they knew who the voice belonged to or not at that time. Because everywhere I went, every studio I went to show up and sing, I was playing with the very best musicians in that town, session cats, you know. By that time, all of a sudden, you know, I'm showing up at a session in New York City, and there's Shaffer and the Letterman Band. You know what I mean? They're the band for the day. When they used demos, back then it was before computers. And if you wanted the music to sound great, you had to hire musicians that played great. If you needed a singer to be in pitch, you had to hire a singer who could sing in pitch. You know, you couldn't auto-correct or tune. You couldn't do any of that then. But, you know, what a thrill I got to be able to show up at these studios. And initially, I would show up after the music had been recorded. But after they got to know me and knew me as a live singer, then they started bringing me in to be there when the band was recording, to get in a booth and fire them up a little bit.
Yeah,
you know, by being
that's
there
cool.
to do it rather than the producer singing it, just to show how the vocal goes, kind of thing. And the routine of it, and they called us the happy people because you can do the first one and not be in the union. But after that, I had to join two unions, the Screen Actors Guild for TV and film, and AFTRA for radio. And these are people that had been people at the ad agency and at the music production house that had been working on this project for months, you know, getting it together, how they wanted it to be, getting clearance and approval from the hires up. End of it, the singers would walk in and be there for a few minutes, sing and leave,
Yeah.
you know. And then when it came on payday time, we were doing real well, better than everybody else, because the unions had done to negotiate a rate of residuals for us. You'd show up, you'd get a cup of coffee, you'd joke with the people there for a few minutes, then you'd get into the booth and start singing. And so that they looked like they were doing something to make their money, they'd put you through a lot of different changes and a lot of recommendations and of how you ought to be doing it, and make it a little rougher here, or, you know, smile while you're singing this line or whatever. Then I'd go to the coffee machine, hang out while they'd have a committee meeting in there to go through the takes that I'd done to choose which one to use. Then 9 times out of 10, it was like the first, second, or third one.
Right.
Out of however many that there were. Because then after that, you start thinking about it too much, and they'd always take the one that had the energy that they were looking for.
What was your favorite one?
Well, I think the favorite one I did, it wasn't one for the air. It was for American Airlines, but it was a presentation piece that they were doing for some kind of in-house convention or something that they were having.
And it never played on the air. Huh.
Not to my knowledge. But I sang this song Somewhere Over the Rainbow. That was my favorite one to do and to listen back to because it was the length of a song.
Yeah.
We're talking about things that are like 30 seconds or 60 seconds, long. Mm-hmm. And, most of them were just the hooks, make it special, make it Burger King. There's more for your life at Sears. Heinz is the thick, rich one. Beautiful skin begins with Noxzema.
Wow. You did all those. That's so cool.
Yeah, I've done a bunch of them. I did over 100 of them.
Wow.
And not all of them hit the air, but I did plenty of them. I think that the thing that they picked up on me was similar to John Hammond's comment to me in that I kind of crossed markets with my voice to where you couldn't really tell who this guy was, or what he looked like.
Yeah.
But it was just a voice that fit the energy of the spot. I remember they did one for Sun-Kissed Orange Juice, and they had the Beach Boys sing it. But for some reason, they got through it, and it didn't have enough edge for them. So they hired me to come out there and jump in and sing with the tracks that they had already recorded so that they'd had a little gravel in there, to add to it. It was really interesting work, to do. I really miss it. It was a lot of fun to do. Once the DX7, which was a keyboard that came out, and they could hire a guy for $100 that had a DX7 that would make sounds of every instrument that there is. Yeah. Then all of a sudden that kind of went away. And the producers started figuring out that the singers were making more than they were for working on the thing. So they all learned to sing real quick. And then auto-tune came out. And then so all of a sudden the whole business just changed completely with the advent of computer. My wife has found a couple of them that I did that are videos of the commercial. There was one that I did. I talked the client into coming to Muscle Shoals and doing it with us down there. And it was for Kraft barbecue sauce. And it came out right after the movie The Toy Story. And they made a cartoon with the same technology that they used on Toy Story. That was the big selling point of this video that they made. And it was a cartoon of a headless chicken dancing inside of a Weber grill with three, playing air guitar on a basement brush with 3 background singers who were hot dogs. And I started out by saying, "Hey, everybody, this is barbecue." And it went on into a rap and then this chicken broke into singing. It's online. There's a video on YouTube of that commercial.
Well, we're going to jump into what we call our speed round. And since you were only able to get through 5-10 minutes of a podcast because it's hard for you to listen for a long time, you might not have gotten to the speed round. But it's not hard questions, I promise.
Okay.
Yeah. Just a way to get to know you a little bit better. So I'm going to kick the speed round off. Mm-hmm. First thing that pops into your head, if you were going to go home tonight and they all went out without you, and you were at the house by yourself, what would be your go-to throw-it-together dinner that you'd make for yourself?
Make a bird's nest.
What in the world is that?
Yeah.
You take a shot glass and put it down in the middle of a piece of bread and cut a hole in it. And then you put that piece of bread with a hole in it down in a frying pan with some butter, and you crack an egg into the hole. And you can turn it over or not. That's the easiest, quickest thing that I can tell you to make.
That's funny. I did know that. But that's an older term, bird's nest.
That's what we used to call it.
Yeah.
Song that means the most to you personally.
Someone to watch over me.
Linda Ronstadt redid that. And that's one of my favorites, too.
It was my parents' favorite song. It still resonates to me in my life now.
Is there one habit that you have never been able to break?
I've broken one of them to pieces at different times.
We'll leave it there.
Yeah. Favorite place you've ever been because of music?
It'd be a toss-up between Muscle Shoals and Austin.
What does freedom mean to you right now?
I've always had it. And it means a lot. I've always been free.
You know, there's not a lot of people that can say that or feel that. That's amazing.
Well, that's freedom to get up in the morning and go, what do I want to do today? There's a lot of freedom in that. It's a real expensive thing for a lot of people to get to do. And the freedom that I have because I was incarnate here, am free in this country and have been to pursue my dream of what I want to do with myself while I'm here, in addition to career. You're free to do anything you want here if you work it right. Make certain sacrifices and surrender certain things. If you get to that spot and you know you're free to say whatever you want to say, believe in whatever you want to believe, go try anything that you want to try. It's all right here where I grew up, Being born in Richmond, Virginia, was a blessing for me. I don't know that Richmond has anything that somewhere else doesn't have. Because my interest is music, Richmond has been a crossroads for every style of music that's happened, and a melting pot from all those different styles, country, rock and roll, rhythm and blues, on down the line. 95 had a lot to do with that because, you leave D.C., next stop's Richmond, Virginia.
All right. I'm going to toss it to Johni in a sec. This is my last question. If this chapter right now, where you're at right now, if it had a title, what might that title be?
Fulfillment. Just leave it at that.
Yeah, that's enough. What's better than that?
I know.
And, surprise that I'm still here after what I've been through. Just the amount of traveling that I've done, the situations that I've been in that could have gone the wrong way, Yeah, I guess, I'm hunting if there's another word. I'd have to, balance that fulfillment with lucky.
You are very lucky and blessed.
I'm a lucky man.
Knowing who you are as an artist, musician, singer-songwriter, and choosing that path, knowing, that'll work.
Well, I think freedom had a lot to do with that. I've avoided situations where I couldn't be free in the middle of it. For instance, I got to know a songwriter in New York. Her name was Ellie Greenwich, who, with her husband, wrote songs like Leader of the Pack and The Do Ron Ron, real building writer. She was best friends with Mr. Hammond's secretary. They were both singing in studios, doing background vocal work, and someone wrote a musical about her and her husband's life as songwriters in New York. It was called Leader of the Pack. And they were auditioning for that show. And she asked me to come and audition. And Paul Shaffer was the musical director for that show. And I went to New York and got there. I was burnt out. I'd been out, doing my thing and playing with Delbert on the road and all. And showed up exhausted. But they asked me to sing Do Why Diddy. And I did. They came up to me, went over big, and they came over to me, hey, man, this is awesome. We got to have you. And I had some experience from theater, from high school days. It's been a while since I'd done that. It's a whole different thing. Theater is way different than playing rock and roll in joints. I was presented with the opportunity to move to New York and do the same show 8 times a week. Live in New York City and go do the same show 8 times a week.
That's not free.
Well, there was an opportunity, But what I was doing at the time was singing these commercials in all these places with these different cats, playing, with Delbert and all these great joints all over the country. I played in every state in the union with him. Free to do my own thing, with my songs, and all that, making records and all. And I preferred what I was already doing. That didn't sound like any freedom in what they wanted me to do. It was just opportunity.
Right.
All right, so I'm going to do my speed round.
Okay.
Easy peasy. Midnight snack.
Got ready to say bird's nest. Ice cream.
Favorite song when you need a lift?
I don't feel no ways tired. I've come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me that the road would be easy, but I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me.
Oh, yes. I love it.
So good.
That usually bails me out.
Nice.
You know, when I'm wondering, okay, how's this going to go? You know, what's next?
I love that. Artist you haven't worked with but wish you had.
Dylan.
Oh, he's coming to Richmond.
Coming to Richmond.
Yeah.
I know a buddy of mine's his guitar player.
Put that out into the universe right
Yes. Steve Bassett is going to work with Dylan when he comes to Richmond. We did it. We put it out there.
Hey, I got to say this. If you're an R&B guy and you want to play live with somebody that you want to play live with, it's hard to beat Delbert McClinton.
Oh.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot, as far as the fun that you can have in a band. In that world, I was with the king. I said Dylan just because lately I've always been a fan, but it's just lately that I've really understood how much I really like and appreciate what he did when he was on fire with it. When he first came out, the records that he made then, what he had to say, and the way they came together, it's just unbelievable.
Mm-hmm. True poet.
Mm-hmm.
True poet.
Yeah, it's magic stuff.
If you had to pick a live performance or studio recording.
But you left one out.
What?
Rehearsal. Somebody told me the other day that they were laughing at me. They'd heard me say that we were at a rehearsal, and I was mentioned prefer rehearsal to a show. And they said, well, why? I said, there's too many people at a show. Then in the studio, is similar to rehearsal, except the tape's running. I never watch anything I've ever done. I never listen to anything I've ever done live. And when I'm playing somewhere and there's 15 phones pointed at me, it makes me so mad because I'm there in a live show for the people who went to the trouble and paid for the ticket to come and see what we have to offer here tonight. That show is for those people in the room, not for the rest of the world or their friends or Facebook or any of that. It just irritates me. But that's just because that's the way I look at it. I've recorded many, many of my shows, but I've never listened to them because it never sounds like what it felt like to do it. I'm all about the feeling of what it feels like. And some people enjoy skiing. Playing a live show is much like skiing in that you're excited about getting to do it. You got to go to trouble to prepare yourself, get your equipment together and everything, what you're wearing and all. And then you finally get to the edge to where you push yourself off. That's the beginning of the first song. And once you push yourself off, flying downhill, you have certain control over it. And it's the closest thing to being a bird that there can be. And a live show can be that way to where it's just a lot of fun. But you have to not care whether they like it or not. Mm-hmm. It's more about whether you're into
how you
feel doing it, And every time I've ever listened to a live performance that I've done, it never sounded like it felt when I did it. You know what I mean? It's never good enough.
Well, you have been interrogated today, and we have asked you so many questions. We're going to give you a chance to flip it, and you get to ask us questions if you have any. Yeehaw. It's time for Reverse Cowgirl.
Is it as much fun listening to your own podcasts as it is making them?
That's a great question. Because we enjoy listening. We enjoy editing and listening to them.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like 3 different experiences. Being with people that are just fascinating and inspiring to us, and hearing everything for the first time and the energy in the room and all of that is awesome. Editing is painful, but it's also really cool.
Mm-hmm. And we laugh a lot through it.
We do. Oh my! I'll start screaming, "Shut up, Jessica!" at myself. We have fun, but then when you hear it all come together, it really is you've created something. Because our objective is when it's only auditory, and there are breaks or nuances or things that are really distracting, it's hard to really hear the essence of the message that you're being told. So we spend a lot of time putting it together in a way that the listener can really hear the story without distractions.
Right.
And hearing that come together
is really good.
It's not, because we don't talk much. I mean, this is the most we'll talk, and then we'll probably cut half of it out. But so it's not even hearing ourselves; it's hearing our guests in a clean way,
Right.
in the car driving.
It's similar to producing records. There's the make the music thing, but then there's the editing, the mixing, and the editing, which is some people love it, some people don't. But I love it. The editing part of things, and so I can see y'all enjoy it. Both enjoy all of it.
We do,
and that's the goal.
We really do.
If you can just enjoy the whole thing, and offer it, that somebody offer it to the world.
I love it. And I also, when we get finished with the product, when I listen to it, I think to myself, going back to what you said about the feeling, is I want it to feel to whoever's listening what we're feeling right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've thoroughly enjoyed this.
Good. Well, I have too.
Well, what do you have coming up?
Most of what I do is private here lately, but I guess you would say public stuff.
Unless you want us to all crash your private parties.
Well, we're preparing for a show that's going to do with B.J. Cosin and Justin Lauder and a band that we put together at the Reveille. On September 1st, we're going to play the songs from this release that we just have of the Feel, which is what we call the group.
Awesome. Yeah, you have an album.
Yep, it's out.
It's out. Look, we're holding it.
Yep, we're holding it. We get some of the first copies.
It's out because you got it.
Yes.
And,
so happy.
we're kind of announcing the release on that. Felt that would be a great place to get a band together and present the music, announce that the album is available. I have dates to play. I feel like I'm lucky that I have them. And, other than play and sing and write songs and produce music, I enjoy, the life that Jenny and I have at home. We have some friends, that we see every now and then. Pretty content with the way things are.
And fulfilled.
Yeah. I got nothing to prove. It's obvious to me that music is something that you can share with people to maybe bring a good vibe. It's not much more complicated than that. Even if you end up in a situation where you're your background to everything else that's going on, you're still setting the tone.
Absolutely.
Even if the conversation is louder than what you're doing. I played one the other night. They were all just talking to one another, nobody paying any attention that I was even there, so that you could notice it, unless you looked and saw a foot tapping over here.
Right.
Or a head moving back and forth, or a smile. That means as much as the whole house applauding. That's the magic of music.
We have to talk about Sweet Virginia Breeze.
Got another hour?
Well, it did become the official state song of Virginia.
Yes, it did.
And it didn't happen overnight. There was actually a long road, as you put it, to get there. Did you ever think it would actually happen?
Not really. I wasn't sure. I mean, it didn't happen enough times that it would lead you to believe that it wasn't gonna. The best way I can explain that, we're talking about a song that took 20 minutes to write. Robin and I were friends because I met him at the counter of the People's Drug Store when I showed up for work at the bandbox. There's a People's Drug Store next door, and I used to go in there for breakfast. And I sat down next to this guy, and we got to chatting. And I was looking for a place to live at the time. I had taken the job to work there at the bandbox, and I was staying at the apartment of the guy who owned it in the Fan while he was down in Williamsburg opening another bandbox. I met this guy named Robin Thompson and mentioned that I was looking for a place to live. And he had a wing of a house for rent where he was living in this house behind the Carillon on the river. And I rented it from him. Of course, we found out that in our meeting then that he was a singer-songwriter, and I was, did that too. So we would jam and we got to know one another. Well, some time later, we decided that we'd do a show together, some of his songs and some of mine. They hadn't had outdoor shows for a long time because something that happened at the city stadium for some outdoor shows had ended with some cop cars being turned over or something, and they outlawed outdoor shows. Well, Robin talked to somebody, and after that hiatus, they approved for us to do an outdoor performance at Shaffer Court in VCU. Both of us had moved from that house by the time the show was about to happen, and Robin was living on Floyd Avenue. And we were having a rehearsal for the show. And I showed up at rehearsal a little early. And Robin was sitting on the porch with a guitar. And he had the hook. Living in the sweet Virginia breeze. That's what he had. He said, why don't we finish this? So we stepped inside and in about 20, 30 minutes wrote that song. The band showed up. We taught it to them. The next day we went and did the show. The crowd loved it. I suggested to him that we record this song. At that time, I was talking about 45. Well, he was signed to an agency and to a manager at the time, and he had to go to them and seek approval to do that. Well, they took that idea and expanded on it, that they wanted to do it and produce it. And they had another band that they had signed called the Andrew Lewis Band, and they proposed that Robin and I do a whole album and use that band as the musicians for the album. And I agreed to do it that way. So we rehearsed it several times. A few songs of Robin, a few songs of mine. This song we just written together. And we recorded it in a couple of days at Alpha Audio on Broad Street. Well, they released Sweet Virginia Breeze as the single off of that album. And 2 or 3 stations here in Richmond picked it up, started playing it, and it spread on out through the state. Roanoke, down at the beach. And it was popular. And we went out and did a few shows together, to promote the album. And then we both got busy doing other things. Robin was involved in Alpha Audio in the studio there and the local ad business and stuff. And I spun on out doing the stuff that I was doing. But the first petition to make it the state song happened like the next year. Somebody started a petition to that effect. But nothing transpired from it. Then some years later, a representative of, I don't know what he was, John Watkins, delegate, proposed a bill to make it a state song. And Robin and I ended up going down there and singing the song for the people in the government. And nothing happened. The bill didn't pass. In the meantime, Bill Bevins started playing it on his morning show and played it at least once a week. Every week for years. Okay. Well, then Carry Me Back to Old Virginia retired as the state song. Doug Wilder had become governor. And some time went by, and then they figured out, hey, we need a state song. So their way of looking for one was they started a contest. And they put together a committee of like music professors from different colleges around the state, and some politicians and some different people. And I was on the road. Robin called me. Hey, man, they're having a contest. Deadline to apply is tomorrow. And we haven't submitted our song. Don't you think we ought to? So what's the deal? He said, well, they do say in there that the song they're going to pick, they're going to own. I said, well, put a circle around that and write. We'll talk about that later. And go ahead and submit it. So then they started the process of hundreds of songs that had been applied, narrowing them down, until they finally got to the end of it where they were going to pick the 8 finalists to choose one from. Well, somebody who didn't make the cut to the 8 finalists sued the state because they thought that one of the finalists had made some campaign contributions to somebody. Wow. And that the thing was rigged. So the way they dealt with that was to just scrap the whole idea and do nothing. So nothing happened for a while. Uncle Bull kept playing it.
Yes, Bill. Shout out to Bill Bevins.
And others, but Bill was the champion of it. But, Robin and I had agreed that this was all something that was supposed to happen to us. It wasn't something that we were supposed to go out and secure for ourselves. Mm-hmm. It was an honor. That's what you'd get out of it. And that's the way it would be an honor, is that if it's something that happened to us. Well, out of the blue, 10, 12 years ago. I mean, that record came out in 1976. Here 10, 12 years ago, I get a phone call from this buddy of mine who, his name was Terry Stroud, and he worked at In Your Ear Studio. Mm-hmm. Also was affiliated with the Film Commission, but, was there, had to deal with politicians all the time because of that, I think. But he called me up. He said, "Hey, man, what do you think about me dropping this song on somebody I know downtown, see if they would want to consider it as a state song?" I said, "Well, I was just talking about you the other day." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, if somebody wants that to happen, then somebody's got to bring it up. It's not going to be me. It's not going to be Robin, So here you are. So he went to a friend of his that was assistant to Senator Walter Stosh. And she had been a fan. Her name was Carla. She had been a fan of Robin's and ours when we were playing at the Pass and that kind of thing. She took it to her boss. He was getting ready to retire, and he liked the song, and he thought it was a good idea. So he proposed a bill to make it a state song. He told me a story later that, these delegates and people that go to national conventions of other states, of all the states, they'd all, when they at the big convention, each delegation from each state would walk down the aisle of the Great Hall to the front to the sound of their state song. And then every time they went somewhere, they had to walk down there in silence because they didn't have a state song. And he knew he was getting ready to retire. He'd like to leave the state with a song. Well, there were some other artists down there that were like promoting their song. Had somebody else write a bill for their song. They were down there working it. Robin was not feeling great, not in shape at the time to go down there and spend time gripping and grinning. So all of a sudden that fell to me. He was a guy who was good at that, and I was the one that didn't. And but I went down there, and whenever they called me to meet whoever they wanted me to meet. Well, at the same time, another bill had been proposed by somebody across the aisle from Senator Stosh. The year before, they had presented a bill to make "Oh Shenandoah" the state song. And that got shot down because they figured out it wasn't about Virginia. Well, he hired somebody to rewrite the words to that tune and turn it into a song about Virginia. And he had a bill proposed to make that song the state song. Well, that made it through committees, and our song made it through committees. And then one Sunday, Senator Stosh called me and said, "Steve, look, my buddy across the aisle has got that song, and we've got this one, and neither one of us want to lose this thing. So I propose a compromise. We write a new bill that would make that song, the re-lyriced "Oh Shenandoah," the traditional state song, and would make your song the modern state song. What do you think of that?" I said, "I got no problem with compromise. I like compromise. I don't have any problem with it. The only thing is, the song's 40 years old. It's not modern."
Right.
I said, "But it is popular." He said, "That's what we'll call it, the popular state song." So they wrote this new bill so that these two songs would be submitted as a state song. It passed unanimously. And so both of those songs became official at that time. It was an honor. And we got to go down there and watch the governor sign it. We sang it on the front porch of the governor's mansion, and they announced it to the state on Christmas Day in the newspaper. And since then, it's been such a thrill to get to see videos that have been sent to me of these little kids at these schools singing that song, And I was really happy also to see it happen while Robin was still here with us.
Yeah.
That was a good lick, So that's the story of the Sweet Virginia Breeze song.
Thank you, Steve. Well, we've sure enjoyed you and your stories. It's
Y'all are nice
amazing.
people. I appreciate your hospitality.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Mm-hmm.
If you're creative and listening to this,
We want your story,
the messy one,
the real one.
the one you don't usually have the opportunity to share. I'm Johni.
I'm Jess.
You're on the hook.
Make sure to follow us on social media at Johni and Jess on TikTok, and you can find The Hook with Johni and Jess on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram.
I woke up this morning, wind blowing across my face, and I just had to look up above.
in the sweet Virginia.